Good afternoon. We're back for 24-0521, Ordinance of Estimates for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025. This is for the purpose of providing the appropriations estimated to be needed by each agency of the City of Baltimore for operating programs and capital projects during the fiscal 2025 year. Today, we have a few agencies that are going to be presenting. It's going to be the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success. That will include the Mayor's Office of African American Male Engagement and the Family League of Baltimore. I am Danielle McCray, the Councilwoman for the 2nd District. I'll be chairing the hearings today. To my left, we have Councilman Christopher Burnett from District 8. We also have Councilman Ryan Dorsey from the 3rd District. We have Councilwoman Odette Ramos from the 14th District. And we have our committee staffer, which is going to be Tony Leva, as well as Preston Lewis from the Council President's Office today. Before we get started with the presentation, if you would just introduce yourself and introduce your staff at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With me, again, I am Dr. Brooks, the Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success, and I have with me today Chief of Staff Janelle Penny. To my right, I also have my Chief Financial Officer, Jamie Kramer. Behind me, I have Director Angela Whitaker, who is the Director of our Community Action Partnership Centers, and Director Shannon Barrows Campbell, who is our Director of Head Start.
Okay, thank you. And for the Mayor's Office of African American Male Engagement, and also the Family League of Baltimore, if you could introduce yourselves and if you have anyone here with you today.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I'm Andre Bundley, Director of Mayor's Office of African American Male Engagement, and I have with me a Senior Operations Manager, Ms. Tracy Eastet.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Demal Millard, Family League of Baltimore. I have with me Chief of Staff Jonathan Carter and Public Policy Manager Keontae Kels.
Okay, thank you all. We're going to get started with the presentation from the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success at this time.
Thank you again. So I want to begin by just sharing MOCFS's mission. Again, our mission is charged with radically improving the lives of Baltimore's children and families by ensuring access to the resources and opportunities needed to succeed and thrive. Specifically, MOCFS works to organize city and state agencies and community and nonprofit partners to deliver an ecosystem of support that uplifts the youth, with a particular focus on children and young men and women of color, and strengthens families by improving educational attainment and social economic mobility. Our fiscal goals for 2025 are to provide robust youth engagement programming, which you will hear throughout our presentation, as well as reimagining the supports and resources provided at Baltimore City Community Action Partnership Centers, as well as our Head Start programs. I want to begin by, as you will hear throughout this presentation, some of the highlights from both our Service 109 administration, our Service 741 Community Action Partnerships, and our Service 605 Head Start. Some of the highlights that I would like to begin sharing is that MOCFS has forged a strong collaboration with our colleagues in both BPD, Victim Services, as well as Monty Victim Services, MOAIM, our city partners at city schools, as well as our state partners, as I stated earlier in our mission with DSS and DJS, to ensure that we are providing supports and resources to our children and families that have been impacted by gun violence. Through our intensive case management, we have an MOU with state and city partners to be able to support young people impacted by gun violence ages 7 through 21. Through this MOU, we come together to provide wraparound support to ensure that if any young person aged 7 through 21 has been a victim, a witness, or a sibling or family member, household member that was impacted by gun violence, we are able to provide those behavioral mental health resources, as well as any type of resources as well as to include, relocation, transfers from schools or school supports, energy assistance, rental assistance, water assistance, so that the family can be whole again. We've also partnered with BPD, MTA, as well as City Schools Police and many of the city schools and business partners around safe passage to ensure that young people feel safe traveling to and from schools. And I would like to shout out MOAIM, who has also provided us a great deal of support to ensure that we have credible partners there to be able to work closely with our young people so that they do feel safe traveling to and from school. We've also increased our partnerships with the Mayor's Office of Older Adult Affairs to better serve our city's older adults, to include on-site application assistance at our senior centers. We have a robust outreach to ensure that we are able to go to our seniors to provide additional support. As we know, there's often been barriers for our seniors to be able to come into our CAP centers, so we have been intentional about going to them and providing them the support. We've also increased our partnerships with the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs to ensure that our events and programmings are inclusive of all and have accessibility to our Latinx communities. I also would like to share that we've worked very closely with MONTE and city schools around school-based violence intervention, where MOCFS has worked intentionally with the Office of Wholeness in city schools, as well as the school office, to ensure that the appropriate staff are in place to be able to support around school-based intervention, working with community-based organizations, also ensuring that we have principals at the table, principal supervisors at the table, whole child staff at the table, and MONTE at the table, so that everyone's voice is being heard when school-based violence intervention is set up within those schools. For Head Start, we were fully enrolled for the 23-24 school year, and we are currently accepting applications for new students for the 24-25 school year, as well as our City Head Start and the Center for Urban Families have been working to build infrastructure to increase our father engagement in our Head Start centers with the goal of increasing attendance and outcomes for our children and families. And I would also like to shout out the Family League, who works in collaboration and partnership with us as we are providing, bless you, out of school opportunities for our young people. We have also intentionally been expanding training for all of our human service workers and managers at our CAP centers so that we can conduct and continue to improve upon our case management for our clients as they come in, so that we have strength-based case management where we have buy-in from our constituents, allowing them to be an integral part in their case management. We currently have 4 bilingual CAP staff, including 2 managers, and all staff have been trained in the language line. And starting July 1, we'll be expanding our CAP services to West Baltimore at the One Stop Career Center in Mondawmin to continue upon our outreach. We have also partnered with our community-based businesses and organizations located in the catchment area of our CAP centers to conduct a quarterly roundtable to discuss better ways to serve the communities. And we have been working very closely with the school community coordinators to ensure that they are aware of all of the resources and services that are available at our CAP centers. So as parents come into the schools, they can also share that information. Also want to share that we have demonstrated a high level of responsiveness to the needs of the community as we allocated additional funds to be able to support eviction prevention for our city residents who are port workers. And we had staff actually, and continue to have staff actually at the port to be able to support our port workers in the areas of eviction prevention, rental assistance, and water for all. And then also, lastly, through our CAP centers, we have been able to assist currently 612 households who have assisted and needed additional rental assistance and security deposits. We have also been able to assist over 24,000 households who have received OHEP assistance, and specifically for Water for All, there have been 7 million applications approved, 4.3 were homeowners, and 3.0 were tenants. Next slide.
When you said those numbers, you're talking about the total dollar value?
Applicants, so approved applicants.
Total number of applicants or total number of dollars?
I'm sorry,
Dollars,
dollars.
thank
Yes.
you.
So for our children and for our, prioritizing our youth, again, to increase the budget, some of our major operating budget highlights, increased budget by $165,000 for summer SNAP benefits and various ad hoc programs supported by the agency, reflects a $1.3 million or 90% decrease in federal, state, and special grant appropriations. Fiscal 2025, the budget for this service assumes receiving $150,000 in revenue from various grants. And here you will see for our performance measures, the percentage of 3-year-old children, this is for Head Start, the percentage, again, we've talked about how we've had full enrollment. This year, we want to continue to have full enrollment for next school year. Again, we're doing a robust outreach, working collaboratively with other agencies, as well as working closely with the health department, with Head Start, as well as working closely with the school system to ensure that families are aware of our Head Start. And then our major budget highlights reflects $120,000 decrease in funds from general fund support for service contracts no longer needed in fiscal 25. And then also the decrease of $1.7 million or 15% in federal, state, and special grant appropriations. In fiscal year 25, the budget for this service assumes receiving $9.5 million in revenue from various grants. And then for our CAP centers, the performance measure, again, that we're looking at is the number of units of service provided to heads of household to remove barriers to self-sufficiency. Target is 50,000. Number of households diverted from housing instability via rental assistance is 3,000, which is an increase from fiscal year target of 24 by 1,000. And then our major operating budget highlights allocate 60,000 to install and upgrade security systems at the CAP centers, as well as the budget also increases funding for software subscriptions used by the agency, and then decrease of $31.3 million or 72% in federal, state, and special grant appropriations. In fiscal year 2025, the budget for this service assumes receiving $12.3 million in revenue from various grants. And we will receive any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks. We've also been joined by Council Vice President Sharon Green Middleton, 6th District member of the committee, Councilman Zeke Cohen, 1st District, Councilman Mark Conway, 4th District. I'll start with Vice Chair McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm interested in how we're engaging folks that are not in an immediate area where there is a CAP center. I noticed you spoke about doing roundtables with within the catchment area, and also speaking with the school coordinators as well. So my first question would be, how are we engaging folks outside of those catchment areas? Have there been any roundtables in other places, like say within my district, even though Southeast CAP Center is close to the Southeast portion of my district, we don't have a CAP Center within my district. I know some of my colleagues, it would be similar. So how are we engaging folks within those areas?
So thank you for that question. I actually have been attending community association meetings to be able to share information about CAP centers, both myself as well as staff from CAP centers, and I know Director Whitaker can actually speak to this some more, but I personally have been, as they say, out doing rounds, going out to many of the community association meetings, taking information, bringing CAP staff with me to be able to share information about the CAP centers. This is why we were intentional about reaching out to the schools so that we can attend PTA meetings, so that we can go to any type of events that the schools were having, so that we could share that information out to families. We've also been very intentional, as I said, to work with the school community coordinators as well as school social workers to be able to share this information out so that they could get it out to their families as well. And I will have Director Whitaker share any additional information.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks. In addition to what Dr. Brooks shared, our team, we're also intentional about going to outreach events that other community-based organizations are having that are not in the immediate areas of our CAP centers. And so this fiscal year, we've been to 95 outreach events so far. We have an additional 5 on the schedule to close out the fiscal year, and we already have 10 for the next fiscal year.
Talk to me about the partnership that you all have with our school coordinators. Can you outline fully what it looks like? Have you guys engaged with? Have you touched all of the school coordinators? Is it just like, say, a big meeting where everybody's there or they're invited? What does that look like?
So I'll begin, and then I'll let Director Whitaker talk about some of the professional development that we've been able to provide. So when I joined the mayor's staff, I intentionally scheduled a meeting with the director from city schools around community engagement, as well as the 2 coordinators for school social work, to introduce Director Whitaker and Deputy Director Franklin, because the school system was not aware of the CAP centers. So that first we could do a formal introduction to talk about what the CAP centers were and how we could partner in making sure that our families were aware, but most importantly, first that our schools were aware. And from there, we began to meet with the school community coordinators, work very closely with the Family League, in this work as well, with the school community coordinators, and then we began to provide professional development to many of the school community coordinators. And I will let Director Whitaker actually talk about that, because they have actually provided some of that professional development.
So myself and Deputy Director Franklin have went to several of the community schools coordinators' professional development days. We've provided training on the services that the CAP centers provide. We've also developed a relationship where we have a referral system that the community service coordinators will reach out to either Deputy Director Franklin or a CAP center manager and connect personally the families with the CAP Center so that we can provide those services. Additionally, Deputy Director Franklin and Daniela McDonald, who is our social program administrator, they're actively working with the community school coordinators to expand that partnership, where at least 2 days out of a week, we'll have a human service worker on site at most of the schools.
Have you guys been able to touch all of the school coordinators, or just most of the schools?
We've touched all of the community school coordinators at the professional development days, and we also have had meetings with all of them virtually.
Okay, thank you. To double back to the first question, I just have a quick comment. I would love to see, because we all know majority of our neighbors, our residents, are not going to be at a community association meeting. I would love to see roundtables extended in other parts of the city, just to make sure that everyone knows the great services that are provided by our CAP centers. Thank you. We're going to go to Councilman Dorsey. Did you have any questions? Okay. Councilman Burnett?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you all for joining us today. So my questions are primarily focused on the rental assistance work. So last year, the council received a significant amount of support for eviction prevention, and yet We have heard that there remain issues with the portal being open to accept applications. And so can you just, and then also just a lot of like older applications that we're still paying out. And we're concerned that like some of these people may have already been evicted. Like we've heard that like some of these applications go back maybe a year or more. Can you speak to where that situation just currently stands so we have a better understanding of both how people who still need help can still get it, as well as where we are in the pipeline for folks who may have needed support a year or more ago? The concern being that landlords who may no longer have the tenant there, like may have already evicted the person, are receiving resources for someone that's no longer there. Can you speak to that?
Sure. The applications that we continue to have in the portal are fall into one of two categories. One category is the remaining funds were really stringent on COVID impact documentation requirements. And so what we have been doing for the last several months is working with DHCD and the ARPA office to kind of loosen that restriction a little, because the further we get away from the pandemic, it is very difficult for applicants to get a document to say that they are impacted by COVID. And so we met a lot of resistance initially, but we engaged a HUD specialist and someone from the federal government who gave guidance that we could consider preventative measures to document COVID impact, meaning we can look at it as us providing the eviction prevention or rental assistance that's preventing a COVID outbreak, because the more people that become homeless, that typically means that they are more susceptible to contracting COVID. We recently received an updated grant agreement from the ARPA funds, so we have aggressively re-engaged spending there. We have not yet received that updated grant agreement for the monies that we have from DHCD, but we do expect that we will receive that as well. So that's been one of the major barriers that prevented spending, and it took us quite some time to align on how we can loosen that restriction. The other category is missing information. And so it's either landlord missing information or tenant missing information. And the way that we've tried to support there is our human service workers have reached out directly via phone calls, via emails, and we also have a mechanism within the software where our IT manager set up to send automatic emails to remind the applicant or the landlord that they have missing information that is required for us to be able to process that application. And we've also encouraged that they reach out to us if they no longer need the assistance, so that we can clear them out the queue. So those are the efforts that we've made there, and we continue to process applications. We are continuing to provide outreach so that we can push as many applications out of that portal as possible, and then if funding allows, we will reopen the portal.
Okay, and as a quick follow-up, Madam Chair, on this, can I wanted to do a data request, if we're, I don't know if the staff are ready for that. Are we good for a request, a data request? Okay, can we get a breakdown? I just want to get a snapshot of where things stand. How many, the amount of funds for FY2025 for eviction prevention, and 2024 and 25, and I guess how much we have available, how much has been spent, and if we could get a breakdown of the number of people, just the remaining applications, like sort of where they stand in the ecosystem, confirmed, denied, pending, for both of those fiscal years. That would be useful for us if we could, and I guess by, I don't know what a reasonable turnaround for that would be for you all?
2 weeks.
2 weeks? Okay, so 2 weeks from now. And I did also just want to lift up I had in my notes here, Miss Natalie Daniels. Has been fantastic to work with on this program, so I do want to give praise. I know we often sit on these seats and criticize programs, but it's been great working with her. That's my first round, Madam Chair. Thank you.
So June the 18th, 2024 is good for Councilman Burnett's. Okay. We're going to get out other member of the committee, and then we're going to cycle back to my left. VP Middleton, Vice President Middleton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I first of all just, want to thank this office for the work that you do for the city. I'm glad that the mayor is continually supporting this office and all of the work that you're doing. The services that you render are just so important for the success of many programs. And glad to hear that the Security Deposit Relief Act is still being funded, because that's, connected to rental assistance, and it's definitely a need, especially during this time. And also thankful that the Family League is a strong partner with your office as well. I think if we didn't have the Family League, the Head Start programs, they help the hippie program, specifically in Park Heights, to be successful. And that's a program that I would like to see in other areas of the city as well. Statistics have proven that it's very helpful, and it's helping young single mothers that really need help in parenting, need help in learning how to work with their child as they enter the educational world. So appreciate Family League assisting with that. I guess my only question is, I'm hearing that the Northwest Community Action Center is going through renovations. Is that true?
Yes, they
Okay.
are getting a new HVAC system and a new roof
Okay.
and new windows.
Thank you, and thank you for that location. It's many people come to that location all around Northwest and West Baltimore, and then adding that Mondawmin piece is really going to be helpful as well. So please continue the good work that you do. I have no further questions.
Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Following up on my colleague's question on the rental assistance, how was the $3 million that the council was able to provide for rental assistance, when was that spent? Because again, the portal didn't reopen. So I'm curious how many people we were able to serve with that money. Yeah, that's my question. I have a lot of other questions, but that's one for now.
That $3 million falls into the category that I spoke about earlier that had the stringent COVID impact documentation requirement. And so I think Dr. Brooks talked about the numbers on that earlier. I can go back and find those. But we weren't able to spend a significant amount of that because of that very strict documentation requirement. We have, like I said, worked with the ARPA office and DHCD's office to loosen that restriction. And so moving forward, we are expecting that we'll be able to spend those funds relatively quickly. And the idea is that we will apply those funds to all of the applications that we have in the portal that's eligible and that's been waiting, and then we will reopen the portal for new applicants.
Okay, so, I guess I'll speak for myself. I wasn't aware that the money that, was allocated that we had asked for was ARPA funding. That definitely has the COVID, restriction on it. That's not the case?
So I just want to jump in. So what Director Whitaker is saying is around the restriction money. The money that you all allocated did not have the restriction. So what we did was actually was able to use that money to be able to support those that were in the portal that did not have the restriction. So the 3 million that was from you all, we were able to support those families that we had the applications, had all of the information that was needed from the landlords, as well as all other documentation to be able to support. And so we'll be able to break down those numbers and be able to provide that information for you.
If you could, and I'll make that a
information for
formal
you.
request in
Okay.
terms of getting the accounting for the 3 million that was allocated, that we negotiated as a council for that. That would be, obviously you can't tell me who, but you can at least give me the categories and that kind of thing, right? Okay, thank you. And if that 2-week time frame works out, that would be super. Okay, awesome. My other.
Councilwoman, before you go forward, can you restate your request?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. So what I'm asking for is the 3 million that the council negotiated for rental assistance in FY24. What I'm asking for is the spending in terms of when it was spent, what categories of families it was spent, and that type of information. And I'm happy to put it in an email as well to the committee.
We'll follow up if we need any clarification on it.
Thank you. We're doing 2 questions, or?
You can go right ahead.
Okay.
You got it.
All right, thank you. My next question is, I did not find a line item in your budgets for the municipal ID. And so if you can tell me how much is allocated for FY25 to bring that program to light and to make it happen, that would be super.
Okay, thank you. So we're actually partnering with BSIT, who actually has it in their budget, so they will be sharing that information forward during their budget hearing.
And do you know, I'll ask them about it, but do you know the time frame that they're looking at?
My chief of staff is getting ready to share that with you.
Thank you for that question. So it is going to be a multi-step process. I believe that the first target is for the end of 2024. That's for vendor selection and verification, and then they're building out a process from there. But the first step of the process will be by the end of this year, or around fall of this year.
We'll say end. And that's vendor selection, so BSIT is taking care of figuring out what that's gonna look like.
BSIT will be leading that process and we'll be supporting them, yes.
Okay, great. And they have an allocation in their budget for the municipal ID program.
I don't have all the details about that. I can get back to you, but they will be leading as far as budgeting, timeline, everything. They'll be leading the entire process, so they will give a fuller readout in their presentation.
Right, they're coming before us this week sometime. It all blends together, but yes. And then what would your role be in this process? Because the legislation actually from 2016 does say whatever the Office of Technology is at the time. And so that is appropriate and that makes sense. So I'm just trying to figure out what the role of MOCFS will be at that time.
So we are supporting as it does address children and families. It addresses, and we're supporting in how we will be, how the municipal ID will support young people having access to multiple agencies around the city, as well as families, and ensuring that there are no barriers for our families and our children. And so we'll be supporting in that way. So we're a partner in the work with BSIT, with the vetting, looking at programming to ensure that we're not creating unnecessary barriers for our families with the municipal ID.
So is BSIT bringing the partners together? Because it would be MEMA, it would be the LGBT community,
Absolutely.
it would be your office as well.
Yes.
So you're no longer playing that role. It is BSIT that is playing that role.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll ask those questions to BSIT when we see them. Thank you very much.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Cohen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dr. Brooks and your team. I do want to just quickly thank you all for the partnership around both Field Trip Fridays and the work we've been doing in collaboration with Director Goodwin at City Schools on restorative practices. And I will just say that I am really impressed by your ability to navigate and collaborate and bring folks to the table and partner and just show up. And I think that's hard to do and really important. So thank you for that. Shout out to Dr. Bunley for the good work related to the Squeegee Collaborative. And frankly, your entire team, Noel, everyone is just doing a really good job. I am curious about the school board. Your office helps to manage that process. We have had, I believe, 2 vacancies for over a year at least, maybe 2 years. And now we're gonna have someone else cycle off. Obviously, this is critically important that we have a fully staffed school board. They are in the midst of a contract negotiation with the school CEO. When can we expect those seats to be filled? And is there a reason for the delay, or just why haven't those seats been filled?
Thank you for that question. So we are actually in the process of, the application process just closed. We did have, I want to say, like one of the largest number of applicant pools during this process. We are actually, MOCFS is participating in the facilitation of this process. We are working with the community panel to begin to vet those applicants. We have 34 applicants that have applied to be school board members. And to your point, beginning July 1, there would be 3 vacancies. So we are very intentional in doing a robust vetting with the community panel. There is a community panel that actually does the interviews for the school board of school commissioners, and then names are moved forward for the mayor to decide who is best to be able to serve in that role and to be able to make informed decisions for our young people. And so we do believe that through, with having this large number of applicants that are really, appear to be engaged and want to be able to serve our young people and our families, that we will be able to identify a number of viable candidates to be able to move forward for the mayor to be able to identify and then appoint to be able to fill those 3 vacancies.
No, I appreciate that and glad to hear there's so much interest in folks wanting to serve on that board. I do think it's important that we not have prolonged vacancies on the school board because, our kids need the oversight. And we as a city need to make sure we are supporting and holding our school system accountable to deliver great results for our kids. So I'm glad to hear that we're expeditiously moving that along. My second question, this is somewhat minor, but thank you for your office's support on the Trauma-Informed Care Task Force. I noticed that the website, the minutes haven't been updated in a while. I think you and I at one point, or you and your staff and I had talked about this, but can we just make sure that those minutes are updated? That task force has been meeting dutifully every other week. I know because I co-chair it, and I just don't think the website reflects that in terms of minute meetings. Could we make sure that happens within the next 2 weeks?
Absolutely. We'll make sure that's updated.
Thank you very much.
You're
Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair.
Councilman, I'm about to say you gave up your spot earlier. Go ahead. Councilman Dorsey.
Thank you. I just wasn't prepared at that moment. I just want to ask about the target numbers for rental assistance. In FY23, the target was 4,031. And no, sorry, that was the actual from 2023, and then targeted 2,000 in 24 and targeting 3,000 in FY25. How many have received assistance so far in FY24?
$612.
I'm sorry?
612.
612. That's massively under target. We're at like, was that like 30% of the target?
Correct.
Is this attributable to anything other than the constraints of funding that have, the constraints attached to funding?
No. It's the two things that I identified, the restrictiveness of the COVID impact documentation and the missing documentation from either tenants or landlords.
So should I assume that, I mean, if the target was accurate, should I assume that we have funding for, Eric's better at math, 1,388 more people to be served with the available funds?
That's correct.
That seems accurate in terms of the number of people we'll be able to serve with funding that we have still presently.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, let's get that funding straightened out. And we're targeted at 3,000 for 25.
Correct.
How much funding do we have for this for 25 versus last year? We have 50% more than we had last year?
So it may not be 50% more than it was last year, but also the further we move away from the pandemic, the amount of assistance needed by each household is decreasing significantly as well, which allows us to support more households.
Okay, what is the allocation relative to last year?
I can get you those percentages of the allocation for the coming fiscal year for, is that what you're asking for the current fiscal
Dollar
year?
amount would be
The dollar amounts, yeah.
great. Yeah, and the funding source
What we've spent.
or sources?
Yeah, I can get you a solid number of what's remaining. I mean, it's definitely not more than last year.
It's definitely not more than last year.
No, yeah, it's not more than last year because we did have some grant funding, the federal grant funding that was available to us last year. We were still spending down and we've spent all of that. So we don't have that going into fiscal, well, actually, we didn't have that really this year. We had a little bit at the beginning of this year, but then we don't have that going into fiscal 25. So the only funding that we have available going into fiscal 25 is the ARPA funding. Is the ARPA funding and the CDBG CV1 funding, and then the remaining general funds that we have.
How much is a CDBG?
It's 9.4 million for rental assistance.
We have that available for the coming year or allocated in the budget here? Or is that
Yes.
rolling over?
That's actually not allocated in our budget. That's allocated in housing's budget, I believe, because it's out of housing.
Okay.
But as Angela pointed out, that's one of the funding sources that we can't spend right now until we get the updated agreement that allows us, that changes the restrictions.
Oh, I thought the restriction was only on the ARPA money. There are restrictions on the CDBG money as well?
CDBG CV1
CV1.
was also COVID funds.
What does CV1 stand for?
Coronavirus one.
Okay, thanks.
And if I'm not mistaken, the one is like the first round of funds.
Okay. Do we have any sort of specific, I don't know, do we need to do anything differently for the coming year other than getting these barriers out of the way? Do we need to do anything different operationally to meet this 3,000 target? Do we have the capacity in terms of personnel or processing, administration to meet this target of 3,000 for the coming year?
So I know this is what Angela, and I'll let her speak to it again, but this is what we spoke to, where we've been working very closely with the federal government and others to be able to have them lessen some of those restrictions, because the further we move away from COVID, then the less documentation it will be to be able to show the impact of COVID. And so we've been working very closely, and I'll let Angela speak to, we've been in multiple meetings to try to explain why, constituents are unable to provide that documentation because the further away we move from COVID. And so we've even offered that if we had more families to become housing insecure and become homeless, then we are could possibly create a situation where we are causing people to become ill because now they're in a homeless situation. But I'll let Angela speak a little bit more to that.
And so additionally, we did have multiple meetings, finally came to came to an agreement. And to answer the second part of your question, Councilman, we do have the personnel infrastructure to process those applications. Once we get all of the updated grant agreements, there are no additional barriers from MOCFS position that would impact us being able to process those applications. The only remaining barrier would be responsiveness from applicants and landlords, and we work diligently to alleviate that barrier as much as possible.
All right, so thank you. So I want to just make sure I'm clear about this. We have served 612 households with the funding for the current fiscal year so far out of the 2,000 that we had set as the target. We're setting 3,000 for the target for the coming year, but still haven't spent that down. Are the remaining 1,388 not yet served this year part of that 3,000 figure or in addition to it? Are we going to serve 5,000 total between these 2 years, or are we going to serve 3,612?
So the goal is still to serve 5,000, but that's also including that some of the applications that we have, they may not meet the eligibility. So to say that whole 1,400 that you stated will definitely get the rent assistance is not necessarily accurate, but it's not to lump that number and decrease the new fiscal year number. The number is for that, the idea is for that to be cumulative.
So we're going to serve 3,000 last year plus the ones that we haven't already spent, because you just said the total amount that is available is the CDBG CV1 money, the general, whatever's still unspent from the general fund, and the unspent money from the ARPA. So we're counting on essentially we're counting on the 9.4 million in CDBG CV1 money that's in the housing department's budget as our budget to hit this 3,000 target.
So I did just want to add, out of the 9.4 million that was allocated from the CV1 money, we have 3.5 million of that remaining.
I see, only 3.5 million remaining.
And that's for rental assistance. And then there's 517,000 that was allocated for security deposits. And of that, we have 446,000 remaining. And I also wanted to point out that out of the grant funding, the grants that we currently have do not support administrative costs. So the programs that are required to run the eviction prevention program, in addition to the staff to run it. So that is something that we've been using the general funds to cover for this fiscal year. And we will be asking for a carry forward going into FY25 to continue to fund those costs. Because we did have previous grants that would cover those costs, but they've run out or expired.
So what I'm gathering is we're anticipating helping households on a dollar per household basis dramatically less than in the previous 2 years. Am I right in that assumption?
That's accurate. In the previous years, when we were in the thick of the pandemic, and for at least 2 years coming off of the pandemic, we've made rent assistance payments upwards of $20,000. That is not the case at all, as we are further away from the pandemic. So the payouts are significantly less. So again, we are anticipating that based on what we're seeing currently, we'll be able to support more families with the funds that we have, since we're no longer paying out that large sum of back rent payments.
Can you provide us a written explanation of how you achieved the 3,000 target for this year, please? I'd like to understand how you assessed the need. It's really unclear to me still. I just have to say, it feels really unclear to me. There are like 4 different pots of money, if not more, that I can't rattle off here. The ARPA, CDBG, CV1, this money for security deposit assistance, and other general fund. It's really unclear to me how much is being allocated this year versus last year. I'd like a really clear explanation of that, as well as how you achieved this goal of 3,000. Thank you.
And Councilman Dorsey, if I can just jump in on this topic, I think part of what makes this really confusing is that MOCFS is utilizing different types of one-time sources of funding in order to provide the program. And I think where we find ourselves, especially thinking about how we transition from fiscal 25 and starting to think about how we plan for fiscal 26, is what is eviction prevention going to look like on an ongoing basis, and what is going to be the city's funding level or commitment level for this program on a recurring basis, and how do we budget that and plan performance around that sort of recurring funding level. I think with that too, we have to take a look at the program parameters, because again, as Dr. Brooks and her team are mentioning now, some of the parameters are pandemic related. As we get further out from the pandemic, I think we have to make some operational choices about who do we want to have this program available for moving forward? What should the program requirements look like? And then that way we can sort of plan around that and fund it in the budget. And then you will be able to see it more clearly in the budget in terms of how the recurring funding is planned for. So, you know, we'll definitely work together to get you the follow-up responses here, but I just wanted to acknowledge partially why it's a little bit confusing is because we are still spending down some of these COVID-related funds that allowed us to stand up the program.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Who specifically is tasked with cultivating those future program requirements?
So this is something that while we've been sitting here, I've pinged this for colleagues in the administration. This is something that we would work on collectively as we start to plan for fiscal 26.
Okay.
Sure. So I think it's important to offer a little context. So when we first started our eviction prevention program, we had, I think, about $98 million that we, in, I want to say at least 9 different funding sources. We are now down to CV1, CV2, which that was always going to be our last funding source because of the requirements that are attached to CV1, CV2. The other funding source that we had available was one-time funding through ARPA. A part of that money is going to the Port Workers Assistance Program. I think about $500,000, if I'm not mistaken, is going specifically to port workers. And then the rest of that money is going towards those individuals who already applied and who have been in the portal. Because even with the $98 million that we had, because we were offering back rent as well as rent forward, we were supporting a large number of residents, but we were providing upwards of $15,000+ or what have you to for back rent as well as 3 months rent forward, right? We closed down the portal because we had, of course, to work through the applications that we currently had in the portal. We closed down the portal and have since been working through all of those applications that were still in the portal and folks that needed assistance. The other piece of this that I think is really critically important is the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services. Through their ARPA funds, they also have a program where if individuals are facing homelessness, that they could get rental assistance as well. So you have multiple places within our system where we are referring individuals who might need additional support. But again, I think the important thing, as the budget director noted, is we are not where we were when we started this program. We were in the midst of a pandemic where there were thousands of our residents who were underemployed or unemployed or were grappling with the effects of COVID-19. And so we have to reimagine that program and right-size that program, given the fact that we don't have those federal COVID relief dollars, CARES dollars, the EVP dollars that we once had. We are not going to have a $100 million eviction prevention program in the city of Baltimore. But what we will do is have some form of assistance for those individuals and families that might be imminently facing eviction.
Thank you.
CEO Leach, to get you on a record, can you just state your name and your title, please?
Absolutely. Faith Leach, Chief Administrative Officer.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Dorsey, we're going to come back to you. I'm going to come back to you. So we are going to have, to make sure that we can get this hearing done, we still had 2 presentations that need to get done. So we're going to have one final round. Council members, you have 2 questions that you will be able to ask. I have one question I wanted to ask, and that was simply an update on the guaranteed income pilot.
Good afternoon. My name is Allie Smith. I'm the Chief of Partnerships and Philanthropic Strategy for the Mayor's Office. General update on our program. Our final payment will be going out on July 15th, 2024. In preparation for this, onboarding has been operating in 3 phases. In March, the Cash Campaign in Maryland hosted virtual information sessions with the participants where they reminded them of the date of the last payment, upcoming events leading to that, and sent out acknowledgement agreements to all the participants just so that they could start planning ahead of time, knowing that this loss of income would be coming. Throughout March and April, they initiated some increased financial education, beginning with having a private financial education class at their Money Power Day, discussing money habits, and they've started what they're calling Money Wednesdays and Wealthy Wednesdays classes about the psychology of financial decision-making and credit. And currently and ongoing, they have one-on-one check-ins where they are connecting with participants to services that might be needed, making sure issues are addressed with the overall goal of preparing them for the final payment and connecting them to other resources to continue to support them after the program. And early this summer, in partnership with our evaluator, Apton Associates, we'll be releasing the interim impact report. So this will show what they found in the first 12 months of the program, and then the final evaluation will be coming much after the program concludes.
How do you define much after?
The final survey is done with the participants 6 months after the final payment. So a couple of months after that 6-month survey.
That's all I needed, thank you.
Thank you.
So actually, we're gonna go back in line, so you have your follow-up. You got 2 questions, so if you ask if a follow-up, you only got 1 question.
I just want a written account of all the funding for everything related to eviction prevention across all agencies and what their source of funding is. I want to know everything that is currently available and everything that is proposed to be budgeted, I think separately, right? That's everything's in this budget separate from everything that's rolled over for across all agencies. What agency has control of it or is proposed to have control of it, and what restrictions. A brief summary of whatever restrictions exist around the use of that fund. Again, anything that's related specifically to eviction prevention. If we could get that in writing, like this week, next week. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councilman Dorsey. Vice President Middleton.
I guess after listening to Faith Leach and some of the others, I guess I just want to make a statement for clarity that we're really kind of at a crossroad now where we're using up using the ARPA money. We really want to sustain the services that we are providing, and we're at that point where we have to really start to be creative to sustain the services that are needed. Is that correct? Should we elaborate on that? Are we at a critical point that we really need to be looking harder at how we are distributing money? Please, anyone can comment to that.
Sure. Thank you for that question. Every time that I've sat before this council and talked about ARPA, I have tried to communicate that there are going to be things that we will continue to fund, and there will be a lot of things that we will not fund. These are grant dollars. They were one-time funding sources, and we used it during a time where our city was reeling from the impact of COVID-19. The work that we are doing with the budget office as a part of our 10-year plan will be us right-sizing our government in and taking a deeper dive into our finances. And we will be able to take a closer look at programs like the Eviction Prevention Program, Guaranteed Income, GVRS, right? And many of our programs are currently going through evaluations. The ARPA team has partnered with our university partners to come up with evaluations, but we are going to have to make very hard decisions about what we will continue to fund post-ARPA. Of course, those dollars we have until 2027, but we are not the only jurisdiction. Every single jurisdiction that receives significant ARPA dollars are having to make some of these difficult decisions, and we will be faced, and we are being faced with those decisions now.
Thank you for that, because we don't want to wait until 2027 and then try to figure out how we're going to save a successful service. So thank you for giving us that awareness, and I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There, in the budget book, there's pretty significant, it looks like, losses of funding. And I'm curious, we've been talking about this kind of all budget season about how the budget book looks different this year because we're actually counting real money and not money that we are anticipating. Is that the case here in these services?
That is the case.
Okay.
Similar with other grant-heavy agencies, you will notice significant reductions in the federal, state, and special appropriations and MOCFS. Like you said, that is primarily due to the change in how we're budgeting grants citywide, where we're removing the projected amounts and keeping in what's known. MOCFS, like all other city agencies, is not projecting any loss of grant funding in fiscal 25.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that it's clear that this, what's happening here is what we've been seeing in the rest of the budget for this agencies. Okay. And then another quick last question. You mentioned earlier that you've trained all of the staff on Language Line. Thank you very much for doing that. I believe you're also working with MEMA on that. It is still really important to hire Latinos, and so I'm curious where you are on that.
Yes, so we currently have 4 bilingual CAP staff, including 2 managers. And I will let Angela Whitaker also talk about our special program manager who is actually supporting across the city, all of our CAP centers, who's also bilingual.
That's super.
Yes, so we, a little less than a year ago, hired a social program administrator who is Latina, and she works with all of the CAP centers, works with all of the constituents across all of the CAP centers, and she's also working with us to be intentional about trying to leverage our partnerships with other community agencies that are serving that population to recruit from those spaces so that we can bring in additional staff. It's been an uphill battle. We've been trying, and we've increased since the last time we spoke, and we are being really intentional about how we are recruiting to fill those gaps.
Thank you. That's great that you've really been working hard on that, and obviously across the board, the city agencies are working on it, so I do appreciate that as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Cohen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, thank you, Director. Wanted to ask about expanding early childhood education. I would like to see us have universal pre-kindergarten in the city, starting at age 3 and 4. I know that Head Start is part of that conversation. Family League, some of the private providers. I know that the blueprint sort of urges expansion of early childhood education, but I think is not clear on how to get there. I am curious how you are working with Dr. Santelices and the school system to move us in that direction, because I think it's all the brain science will tell you 0 through 5 is when we've got to get to our kids. So curious about that piece.
So I'll start and then I'll pass it over to Shannon. We are working very closely with both Head Start with our infants and toddlers because that starts at birth, but also working with city schools with Crystal Francis, who's the Executive Director of Early Learning, because we know how important it is with infants and toddlers, with Head Start, to first ensure that our children, our youngest learners, are kindergarten ready, but also helping families understand how important it is for our young people to be engaged with their peers in an educational setting. And then I'll let Shannon talk a little bit about some of our work groups that we have with our city schools partners.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks, and thank you, Councilman Cohen, for the question. I too agree that early childhood is the answer and is incredibly important and for our families as well as for children. The Baltimore City Early Childhood Advisory Council has been convening for several years around how to put into motion a continuum of services that's aligned and congruent with the blueprint. And so there's many moving parts, there's many weeds and many things to sort out, but it's an active and dynamic conversation, and we anticipate being at that table and being one of the key providers of early childhood services, especially for 3-year-olds in the city. And so more to come. I know there was legislation passed at the state this go around that really does acknowledge Head Start's role, Head Start teachers' role, as well as the child care providers' role and their ability to be a part of the blueprint. And because of that legislation, I do see that we will be able to make steps and strides at developing that pipeline much quicker.
I appreciate that, and thank you for your work on that important issue. And I'm aware of that advisory commission and have been in conversation with some of the team from city schools over there. I really want us to be a little more aggressive with it. I know it's been meeting for years. I want us to set some hard goals and targets because otherwise we're not going to get there. And I think if New York City can have universal pre-kindergarten, if Washington, D.C. can, why can't Baltimore? And with the legislation that you mentioned, with the blueprint, with the increased maintenance of effort from the city, from certainly the state, I just think Baltimore is really well positioned and would love to be part of that conversation as well. And again, I really want to thank you, Dr. Brooks, for your partnership and collaboration and the work that you've been doing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilman Burnett, you have a last question.
I do. Thank you. The CAP centers, and I know this is probably more of a question for DGS, but can you speak to your work in collaboration with DGS about improving the conditions of the centers for both folks who are visiting the centers as well as the folks who work in them every day?
A little less than a year ago, we had a team from DGS. They came around and assessed each of the CAP centers and provided a list of things that needed to be repaired and the things that they will be working on in stages. So far, we've had our Southeast CAP Center 3411 completely renovated. They received new windows, new roof, updated doors, updated HVAC system. In fact, their renovations were so extensive, they actually had to close, and we operated from a temporary site on Eastern Avenue. We are back in that site now. They are currently working on our Northwest site. Our Southern site is owned by Catholic Charities, and we recently went through extensive renovations there as well. So we have 2 remaining CAP centers that the updates are relatively cosmetic, like painting, some cabinetry changing, and tiles, and they are working on those as they go along with a checklist. And as new things come up, we do reach out to DGS to get support on that, and they've been pretty responsive.
Got it. Thank you. On that, and this is, sorry, I meant to ask this in the first round. Sorry, a list of questions for all the agencies. We've had people contact our office from the CAP centers that about the money for eviction prevention and other pots of money. Basically, they've been told that there is no more money. Folks who were coming in, and obviously that's sort of different than what we've sort of heard here, but that there is money that still needs to be spent. Can you speak to what may be the gap in communications on that program via CAP Center staff?
I can't.
Okay.
There
we'll
is no
some-
gap
we'll
in
send you some stuff
communication.
offline.
Our team, they are very clear on the funding that we have with eviction prevention and all of our funding sources. Any changes that come about, we do send out email program updates, center managers then hold team meetings with their staff so that they have opportunity to ask questions and receive answers. So I'm not sure what the challenge is and why they would articulate that, but I will certainly go back and follow up with the team.
Okay, and we'll send some stuff offline.
Okay.
We'll forward
Thank you
everything.
so much.
Yeah, I was going to ask that if you receive any information, if you could then make sure that we are aware so that we can make immediate corrections. Thank you.
We'll do.
I also want to be clear that the portal is closed, right? So that could also be why they are receiving that communication. If you're not imminently facing eviction and you're not currently in the portal, then we might not have direct assistance available and would then transfer you to the Department of Social Services or Homeless Services. So, okay.
Right, but we do not say there's no money available. We do offer additional resources and supports and refer through case management to other supports. I just want to say that as well. Thank you, CA Leach.
Thank you. We're going to hear our presentations from the African American Male Engagement Office as well as the Family League. We're going to hear first from the Mayor's Office of African American Male Engagement, and then we are going to hear the presentation from the Family League. I'm asking that colleagues, you hold your questions until we finish with both presentations. Dr. Buntley, you're going to be first, so whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the council. I would like to share the fiscal 2025 agency overview, starting with the mission, the engagement mission. The Mayor's Office of African American Male Engagement will devise practices related to implementing our Connect to Success under Mission 186 strategies. More specifically, with support from our partners, we will coordinate sustained programming that proactively advance the educational and social economic development of disconnected boys, youth, and young men, including those who panhandle and those in other categories within the city. I'd like to thank our colleagues from the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success, from the Mayor's Office of Homeless Service, and from the Family League for the collaboration that we have done. It has really helped us as we continue to do this work to connect our young men and boys to do connected resources. Fiscal 2025 goals. The first one is to do collaborative work with partners. MOAIM seeks to secure a $2.4 million budget to recruit youth that squeegee and other disconnected youth into our Connect to Success program. With the secured funding, MOAIM will ensure effective execution of strategies that advance the Connect to Success program, which entails our goal, which is ensuring comprehensive resources for our young people and wraparound services as well. What we've done up to this point, when we look at our strategies, thank you. Up to this point, during the 2024 school, school year, during the 2024 year, fiscal year, the number of participants that is youth and young adults who have initiated an intake assessment and case management process. It's been 140 of our young people. And this intake and case management process is where we bring every youngster into our office and ensure that they articulate what their goals are, and to make certain that we, through a 30, 60, and 90-day process, help them follow through during that process. Our next measure of our office is the percent of participants who have achieved 2 or more of the personal goals, again, within the 90-day process. And we're at with the 75th percentile in doing that work with our young people. The next measure is the percent of participants who are employed for at least 30 days, and that's 75%. And the reason that we talk about at least 30 days is because we know we get individuals jobs, but some of the individuals are not able to sustain the employment for various reasons. Next measure is the percent of participants engaged in attending school or job readiness programs. We have a lot of our young people who are involved in 2 categories. They are what we call our SAY young people. SAY is an acronym for school age youth. And then our NSAY young people, non-school age youth. Our non-school age youth are usually individuals that we guide toward jobs. Our school age youth are those individuals we are encouraging to stay in school. And in that group, they're approximately 90% within both groups of the individuals. The percent of participants engaged in-person monthly with a mentor. All of our young people, we have credible mentors who are part of our process, and 70% of our young people are involved in positive and constructive engagement, in that they show up with the mentors, making certain that we go through the guided process to move them forward and hold them accountable. And last, the average percent of engagement within a month, individuals per month, we are engaging of the total pool, approximately 70% of our young people. That's the gist of our work.
Thank you. We can start with your presentation at this time.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Demal Millard, CEO of Family League of Baltimore. We're proud to be your local management board for the city. Local management boards work very closely, as we do with the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success, to braid funding at the federal, state, local, as well as private level to support programming for children, youth, and families. Family League has been doing that for the past 33 years for the city of Baltimore. As a part of our strategic plan, we've reformed our mission statement, and that is primarily to work collaboratively with our strategic partners, in which we have over 90 of them, to support data-informed, community-driven solutions, and aligning those resources to dismantle the systemic barriers that limit possibilities for families, children, and communities. We are able to highlight our major goals for 2025 to continue the operationalizing of our strategic plan, Transformation 2024. Each local management board within the state of Maryland are required every 4 years to conduct a community health needs assessment. We were able to do that with principal investigators, Dr. Lawrence Brown, as well as Dr. Keisha Baptiste Roberts, who did a scan citywide of the cradle to career continuum for the city, and looking at the outcomes, and more importantly, utilizing it with a health equity lens. Goal number 2 is to continue our support and investing in the Baltimore's perinatal health system, and we will continue to collaborate with our partners as a part of that. As you all know, Be More Health for Healthy Babies has been one of the leading collective impact strategies to address the issues as it relates to poor birth outcomes within the city of Baltimore. Through citywide investments, we have been able to support partners as it relates to maternal and child health visiting programs. And goal number 3 is to continue our investment in terms of highlighting the Baltimore youth development landscape. We have historically invested in community schools as well as out-of-school time programming. Our aim is to close the gap in terms of those small community service providers who support those programs versus the investment that's made or that continues to be made for larger programs in which we're able to see that the dollar level of investment for each of those school seats, that we close those gaps. The 2 service areas primarily in which we receive the funding from the city for is service area 385A, and then also service area 446 as it relates to mayoralty educational grants. For 385A, just as I was touching on earlier as it relates to the maternal and child health home visiting programs, there are a number of 4 partners that we currently support by way of working in partnership with the Baltimore City Health Department. That's Drew Mondawmin Family Services, the Family Tree, Sinai Hospital, and Roberta's House. Roberta's House provides support for mothers who experienced an infant loss, and this work is done through a evidence-based model called Healthy Families America. We're able to leverage state investment as well, primarily through the Maryland Department of Health, through its maternal, infant, and early childhood advisory home visiting program, as well as the Healthy Families America program with the Maryland State Department of Education, and as a part of our community partnership agreement with the governor's office. Ideally, we always want to see a connection in terms of obviously babies being born healthy, entering school ready to learn. As Councilwoman Middleton had mentioned earlier, with the work that we've done as a part of the HIPPY program. HIPPY stands for Home Instruction for Preschool Youngsters, making sure that parents are able to understand and the value their role as the first teacher of their child and providing them with those skills. We've been able to scale that program to not only be in Park Heights, but also into Cherry Hill, where the Sherman Family Center, housed at UMBC, is the partner there. Also want to thank Councilwoman McCray for making the connection for the Learning How organization that has now got us to scale it over into the Bel Air Edison community. So our hope is to bridge that gap and also go into other communities as well. As part of the performance measures, as you can see from fiscal year 24, our target for unduplicated families that receive city funding through Family League will drop by 50 for target level for fiscal year 25. That is primarily came as guidance from the Maryland Department of Health. Because of the various funding sources that we leverage dollars from, we were advised in terms of not having any more duplicated caseloads to reduce that target. We're confident that our partners will be able to hit those targets through a trauma-informed and efficient manner. Next is Service Area 446, and this is primarily what you have known historically for us to support by way of mayor and city council investments, primarily through the community school strategy and model. Historically, Family League has supported at least 44 schools, supporting the salaries for a community school coordinator to help leverage resources, not only for the students, but the parents and the families in the school communities as well. Because of the influx of state investment by way of the Concentrations of Poverty program within the blueprint for Maryland's future, that basically support community schools. So now you have upwards of 130 schools within the school district now that are community schools and being supported by way of state investment. So that has allowed us to actually make a pivot and a shift to dedicate our funding more so to make sure that there are high quality after school programs throughout the city, but also to help support programming for high quality programs for Baltimore City Recreation and Parks. I want to thank Dr. Brooks. She was a part of those conversations dating, I think probably well over a year ago, in which we were able to work with Baltimore City Public Schools for this particular rollout. So when you see the drop in terms of the target numbers from 25,300, basically that's the enrollment number for the students that are enrolled in those community schools. For now, target level for fiscal year 25 would be for 4,677. So that would be, again, for those not only as it relates to the after-school programs, but also for the recreational center programs as well. With that, I would just open it up for questions for the committee.
Thank you both. We're going to head straight into questions. Vice President Middleton.
I guess it's more of a couple statements and instead of questions, but I first like to thank Family League and Mr. Millard for, you've been at this for a long time and just really showing the importance of partnering with the city and with communities and really helping our young people. And you have really set a mark in helping the needs in Park Heights, and you have been doing it for a while, and I just want to publicly thank you. I've seen you and your team's work, particularly with your partnership with the Park Heights Renaissance and things that are going on at Pimlico Elementary Middle and some of those schools and those community coordinator partnerships. You have really saved those programs in that community. So I thank you for your work and partnership, and please keep up the great work. And then my other comment goes to Dr. Bunley and Tracy Estep with the Office of African American Male Engagement, which is housed in Park Heights and has been there for a while as well, and really servicing this whole city, and just seeing your work and the partnerships that you have built with organizations like We Are Us, and connecting with places like Langston Hughes Community and Resource Center and other places around the entire city. You have saved a lot of the squeegee kids, and continue to do those efforts and helping those young men. And you know, you don't get enough thank you as well. You have a long history of just trying to work and help and save our young men, and you are doing a great job with it, and I hope you continue with those efforts. Both of you and Ms. Estep are experts in really reaching our young people on the streets, and we need more people like you to keep doing that work.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Thank you so much.
Okay, Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks to you both. Director Millard, did you I want to be clear about the community schools piece. So the Family League will no longer be administering a set of community schools coordinators. That it's all going into the school system. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And is that true for all? Because I know the Y has community school coordinators as well. That's also correct for them. So this is part of the blueprint, right? That the school system is taking on the community schools?
Yes, so by way of the Concentrations of Poverty program, the threshold for free and reduced price meals, it was starting at 80%, and then there was a escalator as which it went down, and then that school would be deemed as a community school. So having a coordinator, but also a school health support specialist to provide support for that school community. So from that standpoint, if the state investment is covering that level of support, that's why, you know, we have made the decision to shift our funding to support the strategy in another way in terms of a robust after-school programming.
Which is very much needed. So I'm glad that you're doing that, and I think, you know, the out-of-school time work is important, and, you know, things that a lot of groups are doing. So I think you're being a part of that is important. I just wanted to get clear on, and we'll hear from the schools later today, but so the Concentrations of Poverty grant coming in from the blueprint basically allow for the health person and the community schools coordinator, depending on the level of the definition of poverty in each school. Is that correct?
Correct.
They're not using farms anymore. It's a different free and reduced lunch. It's a different calculation, but it's still the concentration of poverty. So I understand now. Thank you very much for that.
Yes, ma'am. And also, I wanted to add, we're also still supporting the professional development and technical assistance support for those community school coordinators. So we're actually in the planning process now for hosting a summer institute for all the community school coordinators, obviously, even though that they're working with directly, obviously, with the community-based partners in the school district.
Well, you had that initial funding, right, to be able to provide that, or they're just asking for your support on this work?
So this is a part of our partnership and relationship directly with Baltimore City Public Schools.
Okay. Yeah, well, and you've been doing it for a while, so I think that they probably wanted that expertise as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for that clarity. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilwoman Porter?
Thank you, ma'am. Director, I had a question on service number 385, the health and welfare grants, particularly the FY2025 target. Given that home readiness and just family stabilization in general is very important to the city, can you share why you all decreased those target numbers from 340 to 290? Was that a funding issue? Was that an additional collaboration issue with Baltimore City Public Schools?
So it was more so in terms of a funding conversation in which that guidance was provided by the state health department.
Okay.
So we basically braid funding from different sources, state funding, as well as not only with Maryland Department of Health, but also with the Maryland State Department of Education. And so because of that braided funding that we're able to support, the discussions as part of the guidance that they gave us was that we would make the decrease in terms of our target service.
Have there been any discussions about the Delta, like those families that aren't being serviced in FY25? Is there any kind of collaboration or coordination of services?
So we work very closely with Baltimore City Health Department. So while we support the Healthy Families America, which is an evidence-based program, Baltimore City Health Department does do it through Nurse Family Partnership. So by way of the investments that we make is for paraprofessional programs, the NFP, Nurse Family Partnership, is definitely, as it relates to nurse practitioners, providing that level of direct support for families. So our aim is to make sure that there are no families that are left behind and not supported or serviced.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Ladies, any additional questions? Okay. Happy to be closing this out with the women of the City Council, clearly the hardest working members. We thank you all for joining us today. We will be back shortly at 3 o'clock with the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services. Have a great day.